theme, if I can, and my theme is lessons from the gut. So it's looking at indigestion and colonoscopies. So anyway, I found a few quotes that I thought were kind of funny. I had a bad case of indigestion last night, so I took milk of amnesia and forgot all about it. Did you hear about the Roman fighter who ate his mother-in-law? Terrible indigestion, but he was a gladiator. It's just kind of silly. This was kind of silly too. Why did the cannibal get indigestion after eating his debate team rival? He ate something that disagreed with him. It's complicated. Did you hear about the guy that got stomach cramps every time he ate wheat, but he kept eating wheat every day? Yeah, he was a gluten for punishment. I like that. I like wordplay. And here's the last one. It doesn't offend anyone. What do you call a Jewish man with heartburn? An acidic Jew. That's pretty bad. Well, you try to see what you can do with indigestion. The gut and the colon and all that. I'm really kind of fascinated with all of that, with our digestion systems and the gut and the mystery of it. It's just kind of amazing. I was reading an article about the microbiome of the human gut. The microbiome, which I find is kind of a fascinating word. Micro, maybe having to do with the microbes and everything, microbial life in there. The biome, it makes me think of Om, meditational word, the sound of the universe that centers us, Om, and bi, maybe from biology. So there's this biological mystery to the human gut that's pretty amazing. And the more you learn about it, the more amazing it is. Those of you with a scientific or medical background in some way, maybe take this, know more about this, but every little bit I learn, I'm sort of fascinated with. The human gut, it's more mysterious than we ever imagined, I think, and it's amazing how it works. There's something like 100 trillion bacteria and other microbes. They're referred to as gut flora. Isn't that lovely? There's a garden in here. It's a garden, the gut flora. 100 trillion bacteria and other microbes. There's fungi and viruses and other microorganisms, and there's this amazing balance between good and bad bacteria and so on going on in our being maintained in our guts at all times on our behalf that we don't have to make happen. We just have to support it as best we can by wise choices about what we eat and how we live. If it gets out of whack, we certainly experience that. We have experiences of that when there's an imbalance of good and bad bacteria in there, and what they call it dysbiosis, if it's out of balance. And if it continues, it can lead to things like obesity and diabetes and inflammation and IBD, irritable bowel disease, and colorectal cancer, and all kinds of things. Our guts protect us they keep us healthy and strong if we work with the process and take care of ourselves. And all the research seems to be saying the best thing we can do to maintain a good gut flora, keep the garden thriving in there, this microbiome, is to eat a wide range of diversity of fresh whole foods, mostly plant-based fruits and vegetables, and beans and legumes and whole grains and things like that. I'm preaching to the choir with some of you, I know. And avoid the artificial stuff, like artificial sweeteners and the processed stuff and the toxins as best we can. Some of you know, Joe and I have been talking about it, we become juicing enthusiasts in recent months, and just are convinced that juicing will cure anything. It just is amazing, because you can get down all these nutrients in a glass if you juice it. All kinds of fresh vegetables and fruit and greens and so on. Just, you can gulp it down and get all these nutrients in that you could never eat in a day, but you can drink them in a glass. So it's amazing. We're learning more and more about this, about the mystery and the miracle of the human gut. and what's involved in that. And one of the big lessons it's teaching us is that we need good and bad bacteria. We need a diversity. We need a mixture in there. And if we make things too clean and too perfect, that gets in our way. We want to mix it up. We want a diversity of things. And all bacteria are not bad. You know, we've got lots of good and bad bacteria. We need this balance going on there. And they're beginning to learn that in terms of allergies too, aren't they? That if we don't want to be too precious and too clean when it comes to allergies, or we may weaken our immune system more. The new kind of trend is to look at exposure to more allergens. It keeps us stronger if we allow in a diversity of influences. We don't want to make everything so tidy and clean that we become weak, fragile. We want strong immune systems. We want strong guts. We undermine our good health by trying to make everything too clean. That's a lesson I really kind of take to heart, because I remember so well when I was a kid, we went up to, my grandfather had a farm in upstate New York. I probably mentioned it before. And there's several families, all the cousins came up and would stay for 2 or 3 weeks at a time in the summer. And it was pretty rudimentary living up there. We're talking the late 50s, early 60s. We bathed in the pond. We walked down to the pond with a bar of ivory soap, and that was where we bathed. And I doubt if we did it every day, but you know, that was where we got clean. When all the cousins were there were chamber pots in the big rooms with the cousins, and they'd be dumped out in the commode out there the next day. There was, at our big dinner table, there was always a fly strip hanging over the table. Do you remember those fly strips? Disgusting things, right over the table. And the screen door was slamming constantly, kids running in with dirty hands and dirty feet and dirty, you know, everything, bugs everywhere, and running around barefoot and eating raspberries or lettuce right out of the garden. I don't think things got washed that often, and it kept us strong. I don't remember any problems. I think it helped us build strong immune systems and strong guts. That untidy lifestyle, it doesn't serve us well to get overly tidy. We need a diversity. We need good and bad bacteria. We need lots of gut flora. We need a diversity of things in every aspect of our lives. And I think it's as true spiritually as it is physically. And I think we can draw some helpful spiritual lessons from the mysterious microbiome within us. So I think the same principle applies to mental, spiritual good health. If we get too rigid and too tidy and too sure about how everything should be, or how other people should be, or how we should be, it undermines our mental, spiritual good health. And it closes off avenues of supply and insight. And I think Jesus taught this in a lot of ways in his wonderful, mysterious teachings. I was thinking particularly about a teaching he did about the weeds and the wheat. This is from Matthew 13. He's always talking about the kingdom of heaven, which was really a state of living in oneness with God. You know, that's what the kingdom of heaven was all about. And he talked in many, many ways of how to experience that blissful state of living in a sense of God connection at all times, as he seemed to do so well. He said it's like a man, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while everyone was sleeping, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the weeds sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. But the owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did all these weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" And Jesus said, "No, because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest." I think that's a very mysterious and metaphysical teaching about weeds and wheat. We're all weeds and wheat. We're none of us perfect. We've all got some bad bacteria in there, along with good bacteria, and we need it all. In fact, it's hard to say what's good and what's bad. Sometimes the things that we think are not so good important to our growth in some way. You don't want to try to uproot every little thing that you don't think is quite right because we're being a little too rigid or too tidy about our own mental spiritual growth and about others around us. Jesus certainly demonstrated that kind of tolerance in his healing, teaching ministry. He never expected perfection from those around him. His disciples were a motley bunch who failed him often. It's the ill and the frail and the crazy and the confused seemed to seek him out wherever he went, and he welcomed them all. There wasn't any rigidity in his mental spiritual approach to the human life experience. It's just us. It's just part of the human experience. We're not perfect, and yet we're growing, and there's this dynamic growth process going on in us. It's a mystery how it all fits together, and we do ourselves a disservice by condemning wherever we are along the path at any one time. I've always loved, and I've used this quote before, a great Buddhist teacher named Suzuki. He was responsible for bringing Buddhism to the West for many people. And he was well known for telling his students in meditation classes and so on, he would say, "You are all perfect just as you are, and you can all use a little work." I like that. It's both and. That's us. We're weeds and wheat. We're good bacteria and bad bacteria. We're a mixture. It's a mixed bag, every one of us. And that's good. That's as it should be. That's part of the mystery. How do we build a strong mental spiritual gut then? Are there some good tips for us from what we're learning from our physical resources, teachings about how to maintain physical health? I think so. And I think it's beginning to be perceived in other fields too. I was watching a lecture by a woman named Susan David. She's a Harvard Medical School psychologist, and she studies something she calls emotional agility. And I think that's what we're talking about in a way, how to be mentally, spiritually agile, not rigid, not demanding, like this is as it should be, this is a bad part of me, this is a good part, this is a bad part of you, that kind of rigidity, which is the way misery lies and cuts off our growth. We want emotional agility, lots of flexibility in our emotions, accepting them all, and letting them be fluid, letting ourselves be imperfect, make mistakes, keep progressing. So Susan David, she talks about this, and this is her field, the psychology of how we can be more emotionally agile, and how we can tap into our emotions and which are really just supercharged thoughts, our emotions, and how we can bring them forward and accept them all in a way that helps us bring our best selves forward in everything, in our relationships, in our work, in our families. One of the things she talks about is something I can kind of relate to it, she calls it the tyranny of positivity. And I kind of get a little kick out of that because sometimes in Unity we're accused of being too positive. Have you ever heard that? And she talks about this, the tyranny of positivity, that we don't want to be so insistent on positivity at all times that we're unkind to one another or ourselves when we're not positive. Sometimes being positive is just, doesn't feel very authentic, and we're not in a positive mood, thank you very much. And she talks about needing to be more open to that, because that way lies emotional rigidity. That way it closes off how we're feeling and makes it so that we can't really explore that and make that a part of our growth process. And she makes a strong point that any emotions or intense thoughts, feelings, they get pushed aside, actually get stronger. Pushed aside emotions get stronger. They don't disappear, they strengthen. She makes this, she says in her practice sometimes she'll be seeing people dealing with all kinds of griefs and pain and misery of different kinds and suffering them. She says very often someone will say to me, "I never want to feel this kind of pain again." And she says that she tells them often, she says, "I understand that, but you have dead people's goals. That's a powerful statement to make. You have dead people's goals. Discomfort is sort of the price of admission to a meaningful life, she said. There's going to be some pain. There's going to be some discomfort. And if you're aiming for not feeling anything, for everything having to be very positive and not ever wanting to feel any discomfort again, you're closing off the flow of life. You're closing off the flow of life in you, which is weeds and wheat and good and bad bacteria and all kinds of emotions that rise and fall in us. And they're all good, and they're all worth listening to. So what's her guidance for this? I think it's useful, a useful approach to maintaining mental, spiritual agility and health. This is what this psychologist recommends, and I think it makes good spiritual sense too. She starts with number one, radical acceptance of our emotions, whatever they are, acceptance of them. That as paradoxical as it seems, the more we accept them, the freer we are to change and grow. Carl Rogers, a psychologist, said that as well, that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. It makes change and growth easier if we're accepting of the whole package, the whole mixed bag of who we are. So radical acceptance of all our feelings. Second one is awareness, and I think this is helpful to bear in mind, that our supercharged thoughts and feelings, our emotions, are data, not directives. I find that a helpful idea. We don't get a lot of encouragement to talk about. We don't have a lot of language for describing the intricacies of our feelings. And sometimes we think, well, if you get a strong feeling of something, you need to do that. It's a directive. Get out and do that. Express that anger. Do this, do that. Withdraw. Whatever the directive. And she makes a strong point. No, our emotions and these thoughts and feelings flowing through us in such diversity and with such a rise and fall to them, they're data. They're sources of information about who we are and how we're doing and where we are right now. They're not directives. They're not who we are. They're things we are feeling right now. So be aware of that. Each one isn't meant to be acted on, just reflected on. The radical acceptance of all our feelings, awareness that our feelings and emotions are data, not directives. Third one is don't claim them as who you are. You are you, and the emotion is data, is information about how you're feeling and what you're dealing with, but there's a difference. So she encourages people to say, not, I am angry, but I notice I'm feeling anger right now, and then examine that and reflect on that. That's very familiar to us in Unity New Thought circles. Emily Cady always talked about being really careful about how we use those powerful I am words, and because that's really talking about who we are at depth, and we don't want to link those I am words with something weakening or frail or fragile. And she would say, use it always in an upward direction, the I am strong, I am God-connected, I am living the life abundant, whatever it might be you want to affirm. But we don't want to deny the feelings we're feeling, so I'm noticing I'm feeling angry, and then what is that about? What goes into that? Fourth one is accuracy about how we're feeling. In order to get full advantage of that data, that information our thoughts and feelings are bringing us, we need to be specific about it. Use specific words about how we're feeling. Sometimes we censor ourselves so often that our language is lacking. We just feel lousy or depressed, or it's like a limited canon of words we have to describe our feelings. Would you agree? It's not like we get a lot of practice in really tracking what are the thoughts and feelings flowing through us right now. She's saying be accurate about them and really explore them. This is the data that's going to give us information about where we are right now in our growth and how best to nourish ourselves right now. So radical acceptance of our thoughts and feelings, being aware that our emotions are data, not directives. Don't claim them as who we are, but as what we're feeling. And explore them with some accuracy and precision. Really reflect on what are the feelings coming through right now. What's the mixture of good and bad? What is the flow going on in us right now? Us parcels of weed and wheat and good and bad bacteria, this mysterious biome that's who we are. I think the fifth one is one I've added on to her, is I think we need, in order to cultivate more mental, spiritual agility, we need to learn to let life be both and. We can build our muscle for the mixed up, for feeling both fearful and courageous, puny and empowered. We can do that. We can build the agility to feel that way, angry but compassionate and under control. Both and, mixed up, weeds and wheat, human beings. This is who we are, and as we're growing spiritually. Susan David shared a personal story about how when she was a child, her father passed early in her life. She was a teenager, and she was reflecting on how throughout her childhood he had, in a way, helped prepare her for that. Because whenever they would talk about death or loss, he would listen to her fears and her worries about it, and he would agree that everyone felt fear, and it was sorrowful and it was sad, but he never denied it. He never said it didn't happen. He said everybody was going to die, and it was part of our experience of life on earth and part of our journey. And when time came that he had passed, when she was a teenager, she was better prepared for it in a way because of that. It hadn't been denied away, oh, that'll never happen. And we tend to do that. And then we're denied the opportunity to share the pain of it because people don't want to hear about it. She was prepared. She got instruction in some emotional agility in childhood, which is a great blessing. And it became her life's work helping others to develop more emotional agility. I think it's an important thing to bear in mind in our own mental spiritual growth, all of us. It doesn't help us to deny the bad bacteria in our minds and hearts. It behooves us, I think, to welcome them all, to reflect on them, to recognize they're a part of the human experience. They're important to our growth in a mysterious way, just like the gut bacteria are. As we accept, we're better able to adapt and thrive and move forward the wholeness of who we are without having denied or cut off parts of our nature. So I thought I'd close with a lovely old poem by Rumi. I know some of you are Rumi fans. He goes back to the 13th century, I think, mystic, poet, Sufi. And this is his wonderful poem called Guest House. Some of you might be familiar with it. I think now we would probably use a word like hotel or motel, but it was a guest house then. And he says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." Like that. Welcome them all. Let us be all that we are, all our dark sides, all our good and bad, our weeds and wheat, all part of who we are, and they all add to our wholeness and our strength if we let them in and if we learn from them. So let's take that into a moment of prayer if we could. Let's close our eyes for a moment and affirm the goodness of all that we are, all that flows through us, all the energy in us. It's all a gift from God, all a gift from beyond. And even those aspects of our nature, the thoughts and feelings that flow through our minds and hearts, even those that feel painful or confusing, we welcome them all. We invite them in. We let them instruct us. We let them guide us in the path of life. And we are grateful for them. And so it is. Amen.